So if you're joining us right at 4 o'clock or Mountain Standard Time, Arizona time versus any other time zone that you may be in, a lot of people are in the 6 o'clock time zone. This is craftacademy.org's first YouTube Live webinar with me, Lindsey Gutierrez. And today we are going to be making an adorable headband. You can make it for a small person because that's a really great beginner project. It's easy and fast, and it's for ages newborn to 4 to 10 years old. Wow. So you can really vary in the size. I'm going to make the smallest one possible today so that, I can actually give it to my upcoming child and just have a cute little headband. I picked this color because I like it. It's gold. It's a DK weight. If you don't really know about the different weighted yarns, if you're looking at the store, it's size 3. So I don't know if it's exactly DK. I just picked one that fit my 4mm needles. And if you're wondering which needles to use, I would go ahead with the longest ones possible because there's a lot to cast on. And if you have even a round circular knitting needle like this, 4mm, that works too. This will just give you more space so all your stitches don't just fall right off. And then of course you always need some scissors at the end and a tapestry needle to weave things in. And this headband is actually worked just kind of like a flat piece, straight flat piece. It looks like could be a belt. And then at the end, we'll just sew in the ends, we'll weave them in, and then we'll sew the two ends together. After it's all cleaned up, this is actually the wrong side. This is the beautiful right side. And we'll just take the nice long ends that we have left over from yarn and we'll weave them in together. It'll be a kind of a stretchy, beautiful little headband. I did 2 colors, which actually turned out to be many colors because I used the beautiful multicolored yarn just to make it festive. But for this one that we're doing today, I'm just going to do the single color. And that's what's nice about this pattern from Marianna. What's her name? Let's make sure we plug her. Marianna's Lazy Daisy Days, but who's the author of the pattern? She gave us the 2 color and the 1 color. Yeah, made by Marianna. So if we want it to be nice and simple, we can just do the 1 color. And then we don't have to worry about switching colors and trying to, it is kind of a challenge sometimes to get those colors. It's easy enough to start working in a new color, but it can be challenging to hide the change of color. Okay. We don't want extra challenges when we're just starting out first class. I don't know if this is anybody's first project. Maybe not. I would assume most people have at least picked up knitting before and have kind of an idea of what it is, but it's okay if you don't, because we're just going to be beginners all the way. So first things first, we need a slip knot. So I got my ball of yarn. I got my very first long 4mm knitting needle. And actually, before we do the slip knot, I'm always going backwards, sorry. We need to think about what we're going to do. We're going to do a long tail cast on, and that is a little bit more advanced than just a kind of simple cast on, where you're just kind of making a loop and putting it, adding it to your needle, and it's really not stretchy. So long tail cast on is great because it's stretchy. And if you've got a headband, you kind of need the stretch. First things first, let's look at our pattern. Marianna's Lazy Daisy Days cute little summer flower baby headband in one color. That's what I'm looking at if you want to pull up your pattern too. And it says to cast on 65 stitches for the smallest size. If you want to go ahead and look at this guide and pick your age, maybe you're going to make it for your 10-year-old niece or something, you're going to do 89 stitches. And the issue with the long tail cast on is you really have to think in advance how many stitches you're going to be putting on, and then that will equate to how long your tail is. So usually when you start knitting, you don't really need a tail that's too long, maybe like 5 inches, and you just do a slip knot and start adding your cast on. But this one, you use the long tail as part of your stitch. So actually I did like I made a 2-year-old one. So it's 81 stitches, and I had to figure out how much yarn. Like, I didn't want to do that twice, so I had to figure out how much yarn. And I calculated it, and I did like 5 feet of yarn for my long tail. And 5 feet for me is how tall I am. So I just stretched it out between my 2 fingers, and it still was barely enough yarn for 5 feet. So if you really want to make sure you know how much yarn you need, this is the secret trick. It's not a secret, but it's very useful. And you want to start with, your normal 5 inches that you might be weaving in at the end. And then you just wrap it around your needle from there. And however many stitches you're going to cast on. So if you look at your guide, okay, I'm going to make the 1 to 2-year-old, and I need to do this many stitches. Then you just wrap it around your needle that many times. So I'm going to do a 65. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 34. Oh, and I got halfway. And sometimes I cheat and I go, oh, well, that's halfway. I'll just double it. So I'll just unravel it from my needle and just kind of pick it up and fold it in half and say, okay, that's enough. I just doubled it instead of counting to 65. So I took that amount of yarn, doubled it, and then that is where I'm going to start my slip knot. Whoa, that was a lot just to get to a slip knot. So now, how do we make a slip knot? Maybe you've made one and you just have to, you were like me, and when you started knitting, you were just like, I'm going to have to look up how to do this every single time. Or maybe it's easy for you to remember, but you just make a loop. And then, of course, the loop that's on top, you put that piece of yarn behind the loop. And now there's a bar behind your loop. And then you just go underneath that bar and with your needle and pull it through, and then hold the 2 ends. And now you have a slip knot. And then the way you know that it worked is you can make the slip knot, you can make it tighter and looser. You can pull it and it loosens, or you can tighten it and it's nice and snug, but you want it to be able to still move across the needle. And let's do that 1 or 2 more times. So you just make a loop. The part of the loop, the yarn that's on top, is just going to go behind to make that bar. And then you would just put your needle underneath that bar so you can pull it through that loop, and then pull the 2 ends. And that's good. That's a good way to make a slip knot. There's other ways, but I like the simple way because I feel like it's easy to remember. This is very simple. And then I had a cute little student once tell me, because I taught for middle school, that if you put it down, it looks like a little fishy. And then you take the top kind of fin and put it behind. And like things like that make it easy to remember too. I think it's cute. Okay, so now we've done a slip knot a few times. Let's make sure we're centered here, and hopefully we're all on the same page. And now you're maybe wondering, okay, now what are we going to do with this long tail? And sorry, I was just reading some of the comments I got. And then I just wanted to start with what direction the long tail needs to be. The long tail needs to be facing towards you. And then the yarn ball is behind, okay? And so now you have these two pieces of yarn, and we're going to figure out how do we place our hands and how we want to do it. The easiest way is just to take your two middle fingers here. I mean, I know you have one middle finger, but you know, the ones in the middle. And kind of use it as a little like clip your yarn, hold it just to keep it in place. And then your your index finger is going to be holding the yarn ball side of the yarn. And your thumb is going to be holding the long tail side. And it makes kind of a diamond, and then you are now all set up. So you just have to kind of hold your hand that way for a while just to feel comfortable, right? Maybe try it again, clip it with your middle finger and your ring finger, and then use your index finger to kind of hold back your ball of yarn side of the yarn, and then your thumb to hold back the long tail side. And then make sure your slip knot isn't too loose. All right, one more time. Try to do the rule of 3. Do it 3 times. Clip it with your middle fingers. Use your index to extend, and your thumb to extend the other side here. And now, really, you're going to be facing it towards yourself like that. So more awkward hand movements. Ooh, face it towards yourself. And then we're going to use this as a way to like loop. So put our needle by our thumb right here, loop underneath. Now you have it on your needle, and then turning your hand. So just, hold this down with your index finger, thumb, turn your hand, and then grab this piece that's on your index finger and just pull it through that loop you made with your thumb. Let go and pull, and there you go. And we're going to do that a bunch more times because we have to do it 65 times. Oh my goodness. That's all right. It'll be fun. All right. Clip it. Index finger, thumb, make a nice diamond, turn it towards yourself. Put your needle on your thumb just to get it in the right position. Grab that loop. And then grab the one on your index finger to pull through. And then I use my thumb to kind of tighten it like that. If you're really having a hard time holding it like this too, you can just like grab it with all your bottom fingers. As long as you have this diamond, that's what matters. I always used to just do that. But once I started doing this, it felt actually a little bit less challenging. So underneath the thumb loop, grab over the top of your index finger yarn, pull it through that loop, and then I just kind of extend my thumb to pull it through. It's like, really, it would be nice to get it as efficient and as quick as possible since you have so many stitches to cast on. We only have 4 so far. So after a while, you just like zooming on through it. And you stop counting and you just go. And then you go back and count. this whole webinar would just be casting on if we did it slowly the entire time. So we'll just speed it up a little bit. Yeah, and I don't know if you guys know a lot about craftacademy.org, but there's lots of different classes and one-on-one tutors, and people are experts and artists, fiber artists. It's pretty cool. I can book a private class for knitting or crocheting. I don't know if you got any crocheters out there. I like doing both, but I started out crocheting when I was a little kid. And knitting is just like a fun challenge that I decided one day I needed to learn. I feel like a lot of people are really getting into the fiber arts lately. All this like slow fashion, like creating things you want. The sewing is pretty handy too. Because, you go to the store and there's just nothing that it really fits you, and you go home and you just like create it. It's so much cooler. And I just feel like I can never find a cute little headband for my son, so I just created it instead. And if you have a little girl, you, I don't know, maybe you are into the neutral unisex thing, or maybe you just really like to lean into the flowers and the pinks and whatever. That is also available in this pattern. Also, if we have time, we can make one of the flowers. They're like definitely a little, for me, I practiced it once, and it's, the first one always looks a little strange, but it seems like pretty straightforward little flower, but maybe a little bit more challenging. So I'm going to just count my stitches real quick. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 32, 34, 35. Let's just do 30 more. So as you can see, like, I'm going to need my whole needle just for even the smallest size. So if you're really having trouble finding a long enough needle, you can always use a circular needle, which are nice because you never lose your work. It doesn't fall off unless you're, unless you're really taking it on a long journey in your backpack. I guess we crashed for a little bit and came back, but that's to be expected, right? Technical difficulties, internet, and all of that. All right. Wonder how many we have now. I wonder if anybody is able to follow along and make the headband at the same time. 2, 4, 6. If that's the case, I do want to make sure you can catch up a little if I'm going too fast. But I'm pretty slow, so it shouldn't be difficult. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 10 more, 15 more. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oops. Let me get more yarn here. 13. Sorry, I'm trying not to count out loud in case you're counting too. 13, 15. All right. Make sure, double check. I have 65. Now, I will take this opportunity just to talk in case you're catching up. Look at how I have so much of my tail left over, and that's okay because I will use it. I will use it to sew the two ends together, and that will be great. So the pattern says very specifically what to do for each row, and that's why the number of stitches should be accurate to whatever size you're making. So make sure you have the correct number. Don't just guesstimate, because then your pattern will be a little bit off and it won't look right. So that is one slightly more challenging aspect to this pattern, is that keeping the knits and the purls in the right place so that it does look like a nice ribbing. It's like a double rib kind of, because if you're doing knit 2, purl 2 on one side and then flipping over and doing purl 2, knit 2 on the other, then it's going to have a really nice line of knits to knit row, and then they're not, I'm sorry, rows are this way, but you know what I'm saying, like there'll just be like a really nice pattern of knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, knit, purl, purl, so that you aren't just getting something that just looks like random, more like kind of how this like crazy rainbow color looks sort of random. But if you're doing it according to pattern, it will turn out like a ribbing, really nice, and it will fit better and it will look better. So let's start knitting. The first thing you need to do is just knit 1. And if you're looking at the pattern too right now, you might see a little asterisk and then some parentheses around knit 2, comma, purl 2. And maybe you're wondering, what that means, or maybe you've seen it before, but the asterisk means repeat from, and they always usually say it in the pattern too. So you don't have to go back and knit 1, knit 2, purl 2. You just have to knit that 1 at the beginning and then repeat what's in the parentheses however many times until you get to the last 4 stitches. And that's what it means to last 4 STS. And then you want to knit 2, purl 1, knit 1. So that way, when you get to your second row and you're slip 1, knit 1, doing all these other things, it will look lined up. It will look great, I promise, as long as you follow it exactly. So let's start. Knit 1. Let's make sure you can see everything. How do we knit? Maybe you also haven't knitted before. You have all these beautiful stitches, making sure that the kind of like the part that looks like a stitch on the bottom, like that is all lined up on the bottom, nothing twisted, as they say. Don't twist it. Make sure it's all in a row and it looks uniform. Okay. And then you can bring your right hand side needle that you were casting on to your left hand. And I do apologize if you're a lefty, because I've taught people who are left-handed before, and usually they don't have too much trouble, but it can be challenging to like try and reverse it. But it's usually pretty doable. I wouldn't say easy or difficult, just doable. So your first stitch is right here on your needle, this loop, and you go behind the loop. So you start you're on the front part of it, but you're in between, the two stitches. You put your needle through to the back. So through the front on the left side of it to the back. And that will kind of loosen things up. So you want to maybe kind of keep it a little tighter, not too tight, but you don't want it to get super loose because then it will be a big old stitch. And then I usually take with my left hand my extra yarn just to kind of keep it a little taut. I just kind of wrap my pinky finger around it and then turn my hand like that. You see, okay. And then put it in between my middle finger and my index finger, the yarn. And that's kind of my little way of holding the yarn in place without it being too tight or too loose. Because this is kind of my wrapping finger here. My index finger is going to do a lot of work here. My hand is going to be doing a lot of movement. So I've inserted my right needle into my stitch on the left-hand side needle. I've got my hand in place with my yarn in a good spot where I just wrap my pinky finger, and this is the yarn that's attached to the ball. We're done with the long tail for a while. We're going to use it at the end. So wrap my pinky finger around, turn my hand around, put the yarn in between here, between my middle finger and my index finger, and then that's kind of a nice taut little bit of yarn there. And then I'm still going to want to use these middle ring finger and thumb to hold my right hand needle. So now I'm good. I'm also kind of using my index finger and my thumb to support my right hand needle also from my left hand. So I should probably talk about what we're doing with our left hand. Kind of resting the work on your ring finger and pinky, and then keeping these thumb and forefingers free. Okay, so let's start our knit stitch. I'm going to put my needle in from the left and have it come out the back. Wrap my yarn. And then what direction do I wrap? Do I wrap towards the where the needles come together? That's what I always think about. Like, okay, I'm going around the back and in between the needles where they come together. If it helps you to think about clockwise or counterclockwise, then I guess you could say it's going counterclockwise. But that just confuses me. So I just think about it and how it's going around the back of the needle and in between the two needles. And then that creates a little loop on my right hand needle that I can then just pull through. And then the loop that was on my left hand needle needs to come off and become part of my right hand needle loop. So my first knit stitch, if I pull on the tail a little bit too, kind of make sure it's snug, it's on there, it's not too loose, it looks good. All right, well, that was just the first thing. Knit 1. Now we need to knit 2. Two more. Knit 2 more times. So put my needle in from the left, wrap my yarn over, so it's called my yarn over, aptly named, and wrap it towards where the two needles meet around the back. Okay, and then it creates a loop that we then pull through the left-hand side loop, and then we pull that loop off of the needle. So now we have our second knit stitch. Now we just need one more knit stitch. So enter from the left of the stitch, wrap around the back, create a little loop that pulls through that stitch, and then it comes off the needle. All right, you got your 3 knit stitches. You're doing really good. You're doing great. I'm proud of you. Now we have to do 2 purl stitches. Wow. This early in the game, we only practiced our knit stitch 3 times, and now we're jumping to purl stitch. And I promise it's not going to be challenging. It's just as easy as the knit stitch. So all we need to remember is that we're reversing things, right? So we want to pull the yarn to the front of our work. Okay, make sure you have enough yarn. And we're reversing things again. So instead of going to the left side of this stitch on the left needle, we're going in through the right side and through the front. So everything is just the opposite. But we're still wrapping counterclockwise, but we're wrapping first towards the middle of the where the needles meet, and then ending at the front of the work. And then we're taking the loop that we just created with our yarn over and pushing it out the back and taking that loop off of the left-hand side needle. So I'll show you again from a different angle. I won't hold it like that if that's confusing everybody. But look, now our yarn is in the front. We don't even have to move it. It's just in the front. And there's a cute little bump right there. That bump is your purl. Beautifully named, right? It's a precious little purl. And then you're going to enter from the right-hand side of this next stitch. Wrap around towards the middle of the needle where the needles come together, and then it's going to end in the front of your work, right? So you're wrapping around to the right. And then when you push your needle to the back, it should have that yarn over on it. And now you have a new loop on your right needle, and you take off the left needle. Okay, that was the 2 purl stitches. And now remember, it's like a ribbing pattern like we saw in the finished product. And you're going to just do purl or only twice, right? You're only going to do knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, knit, purl, purl. You can do that for a long time until you get to the end. So let's move our yarn to the back, put our needle in through the left side, because now we're knitting again. So the left of the stitch and out the back. And then we're going to yarn over, wrapping around the same direction as before, but still ending in the front of that needle. But yeah, it's a very similar movement as the purl, but you're ending up in a different place relative to the needles. So you're ending in between the needles this way when we're knitting. So to the left, out the back, wrap yarn over, and pull it in between the 2 needles, and then create your yarn over loop. Take the other loop off the left-hand side needle. So now that's your 2 knits. And maybe you're like, where am I in my pattern? Oh my gosh, I forgot. Well, we had 1 knit, 2 knit, 3 knit. And then you can see you had 2 purls, and now you have 2 knit. Okay. Sometimes you have to go back and backtrack and figure out where you are, because you're getting distracted, right? So these are purl stitches. So I brought my yarn to the front and in through the right, out the front, yarned over, pushed my loop out the back, and then took the loop off the left-hand side needle. Put my right-hand needle into the right side, out the front of the loop, yarned over, create a new loop, push it towards the back, and slip that off the left-hand side needle. Now we have 2 purl stitches, and we're ready for our knit again. And then I don't know if you guys you want to see more of this pattern, so maybe if I can get to the next row a little bit faster, you can see what is to come. But it's, there's only one new thing on the next row. It's a slip stitch. And That is like the easiest thing ever. So I'm going to look at my yarn on my needle and make sure it's not getting twisted, which is usually an issue if you are working with a circular needle. You just have to be really careful if you're joining the ends. But luckily we are not joining the ends and most likely won't twist things up too much, but you never know. Okay, we're doing our knit stitches, back to purl. We're in the front, working in the front with our purl stitches. Sorry, just getting my yarn all situated here. Yarn over for the purl. Now back to knit, yarn over, pull through that loop. And if you're like, wait, did I just knit or did I just purl? Just be like, oh, where is my yarn? Is it in the back? Do I need to do another knit stitch? No, I already have two. I'm going to go to the front now and do my purl. And knit a couple times, purl a couple times. At least it's more interesting than just knitting straight across. It's kind of the fun of a pattern. You have to think a little bit while you're doing it and really kind of try to pay attention so you can get that really pretty look at the end where you're like, wow, that looks great. And also, you know, things like tension, if you've heard people talking about that, can make things look really nice. If you are working on like how you hold your yarn, if you know like about gauge, maybe you know that you did like a gauge swatch or something, and for some patterns it really matters. This pattern not so much, but and you can see that you're a very tight knitter, you're a very loose knitter. You can adjust the size of your needles, and that can also improve the look of your pattern, because you know, if it's too tight or too loose, sometimes if you size up or size down your needles, you can get things looking a little bit more tip top. I feel like I can't remember if I'm a loose knitter or a tight knitter. I'm trying to remember if I need to use like a bigger. I feel like it also depends on the yarn. So if you have a nicer, more expensive yarn, to be honest, sometimes it is easier to knit, or if you have nicer knitting needles, like they can make your work like looser or tighter. I was using this cheaper yarn to make a little flower, and everything was just getting stuck, you know, and it just felt like tighter. And this yarn feels it's actually not too expensive, this yarn, but I'm trying to remember if it has like, it's just a different composition, and it must be more stretchy, and it's softer. It's nice. So I also want to make sure I don't pick anything that's going to be too scratchy. Oh no. I feel like I got distracted talking and I messed up. Oh no, well that's a good learning experience, because maybe we can go back and fix it. Did I get distracted? So I'm looking at my pearls. I got two, and then I have two knit. And I'm like, is that two pearls and then two pearls? So if I want to fix it, I'm just gonna go and put my needle on my left-hand side needle back through the loop underneath my knit stitch. Hopefully I twisted it the right way. And try to go back. Yeah, that looks right. A little bit more challenging with the purl to go back. I think it's good if I put my that one I might have twisted. Let's see. Oh wait, see where the yarn is going in? That's where you want to put, where the yarn's coming out of, that's where you're going to put the needle. And then take that little loop out. Was that correct? And I guess that is a yarn. That is a knit stitch, and should have been another purl. Yeah? Okay. I don't know. I just got distracted talking. Okay, here we go. Back to purl. This is why things are slow going, because you just want it to be so perfect, but there's always a mistake, and that is something to remember. There is no perfect knitting project, and that's okay. Only you will notice the error. When it comes to a pattern, though, if you can catch a problem and fix it, that is always going to make you happier in the end, because it's going to look super weird if you don't catch that little thing that's a little bit off. But if it's only for one row, it's fine. It's totally fine. But if it starts you down a path of like getting things all out of order, like the wrong number of cast on stitches, then you definitely want to fix that or start over. And that's something we always talk about when I teach people ongoing, is like, you might have to start over, and you might have been really far along in your project and it's just not turning out, and it was just a great learning experience, and the next one is going to be 75 million% better. Just so much better. You know, the second time you do something, your first time always looks a little less clean, and it just gets easier and easier every time you do it. Or like if you're going to make something, oh, you guys, I didn't notice I was off screen, but oh well. If you're going to make something as a gift, I like to do that. Oh, we're down to the last 4, and I just knitted one. Let's check our pattern. So it says knit 2, purl 1, knit 1. Okay, cool. So I'll knit one more, purl 1, so bring the yarn to the front, enter from the right side, yarn over, and there's my purl 1, and then my last one's going to be a knit. Oops, fell off my left hand needle, and that's okay, because all I need to do is just get that loop over, and then it's good. Okay. So I don't know if you guys are seeing this on your end, but your project should now look like it's alternating in knits and purls, little bumps, and I turned mine over to the wrong side. So this was my right hand needle. Looks pretty similar, but a little different. I'm going to turn it over though. And now we're on the wrong side. So if you see that in a pattern, right side RS, WS is wrong side. Kind of like how this is the front, this is the right side. Looks nice. And then this will be the second, you know, it's kind of like what things look like on the back end. So like this was where I started. My first row started on this side. And this is my back side of my yarn or my knitting, the wrong side. So it can look different. Well, now let's look at row 2. Second row says slip 1, knit 1. Okay, we can do that. Easy. Watch and learn. Oh my goodness. So I'm just going to put my needle into the left, because I know it seems so strange. Like, why don't you just go like that and just take it off? Just like put it in purlwise. Well, I mean, usually you want to assume it needs to be maybe what the next stitch is, knitwise. So you're going to put it into the left side of that loop and hold your working yarn how you were holding it before, where you had your little pinky holding. You placed your hand over the top, put the rest, the between your middle and index finger, and then you turned your hand back to hold your needle. So you're holding it nice and tight, but not too tight. And then you have your fingers free to hold your needle. And so I just took my needle, put it in through the left side, and then I take it off the left needle. And that way it twists it in the right way, so it just looks right. And then what do? Knit 1? I already forgot. Knit 1. And then we start in our pattern the opposite direction, where we purl 2, knit 2 instead of, the reverse. Okay, knit 1. We're barely just getting to the second row and probably going to run out of time before we can finish our work off. So maybe if we have time, I can show you how to cast off too before we get out of here. So I'll just do this row quickly and then maybe show you guys how to cast off. That way you don't feel like you don't know how to finish it. And casting off is pretty straightforward as well. So we're doing purl 2, knit 2 over and over and over until we get to the last 4 stitches again. Or is it the last 3 stitches for this row? Yeah, we'll get to the last 3 stitches. So keeping that in mind. Okay, we're on the second purl for this row. And we're going back to knit. Knit 1, knit 2, purl 1, purl 2, knit, knit, purl, purl. So cool. What a cool little pattern. Knit. Yeah, and it's pretty impressive for like a beginner project, right? You're like, this is not just a straightforward knit all the way across, purl on the back, it's not like uniform. It's a little different. It's kind of nice to see a little ribbing pattern variation, and then it's also functional because the headband will fit for longer. It will stretch because we know how they grow so fast. And I don't know, maybe you're seeing this and you're like, I want a headband my size. Well, next week we're going to make a headband for the, I hate to say grown-ups, maybe I'll say big kids, the old kids, right? We're young too, right? We just need our own headbands. The one I'm going to do next week is a seed stitch, so it'll be a little bit fun, a little different, but still manageable, still doable. Not too difficult, not too easy. All right, we got 2 purls, 2 knits. Maybe you guys are like going faster than me and you're already on your 3rd row. That could be, that could very well be. And it's not a race. I'm just trying to show you one more skill before we get off. But also enjoy your knitting, right? Enjoy it. Watch TV while you knit. Or sit in the car and be a nice mellow passenger instead of a backseat driver. And just knit instead of helping your driver manage the traffic. Especially if you live where I live, which I know a lot of you do not, but if you live where I live, people don't know how to drive, especially in weather. We're in Arizona here, and there isn't a lot of weather. So people are like, what do I do if it's raining? And also lots of visitors from the surrounding states who are just totally different drivers and think that think that we are terrible drivers here, but they're not afraid to tell us. So don't drive, just knit instead. It's so much better. All right, I'm getting to the last 3. Woo! Look at me go. I did it. Now I'm on my last 3 here. What do we need to do? Purl 2, knit 1. All right. Bring my yarn to the front. Purl, purl, knit. Okay. And I probably sped up. Okay, cool. We still have a few minutes. And I don't know if you guys want to take a look at your job well done. I always do. It makes me feel good. But look at that. You got 2 rows. You can already see the beautiful ribbing beginning. As long as things are lining up, you got your purls on top of your purls and your knits on top of your knits. And if you know the difference, it's the V shape is the knit and the bump is the purl. And as you start building more rows, it looks even more obvious, more interesting. So let's do a quick cast off just to make sure we understand how to do that. So with casting off, you are just gonna, you know what, and I struggled with this, how to teach it, but you could just do like a straight knit cast off, unless you're feeling a little interesting, which I was like, I'm gonna do something fun. I'm gonna do something complicated, but I think for this tutorial, we'll just do a simple knit cast off. So we're just gonna pretend like we're not gonna try and match these stitches while we're casting off. We're just gonna do knit all the way across. So I'll knit 1, and I'm gonna tighten it up at the end. I like to kind of pull and tighten so there's not this big old loop sticking out of the end here. And then we're going to knit 2. And now I have 2 needles on my right hand, 2 loops on my right hand needle, 2 stitches. And then I'm going to use my left hand needle to kind of go under this first stitch that I did. So it's the one, that's closer to my hand. And that one's going to loop over like this. And that's just going to leave the second stitch that I did. So it's starting to look kind of flat and nice on top, but you don't need to do like 2 more. You can just do the next knit stitch to get those 2 on your right hand side needle, and then take that further away knit stitch, lift it and put it over that needle so that there's just the one left. And look, there's like another cast off there, so it looks like a flat top, you know. It's creating a little flat top on the top of your headband. So you'll do that all the way across. And I don't know, maybe this is a cute size for a newborn. I'm not sure. We'll see at the end when we take our tapestry needle and sew it together and see how big it is too. I'm like, is it an awkward tiny size or is it perfect? Okay, so I'm gonna knit stitch. I'm just gonna do that all the way across, and then I'm gonna take the further away loop and then loop it over that second stitch so that there's just one left on my right needle. And you'll do that all the way across. So that way, when you get to the end, you'll have one loop on your right hand side needle. You'll, cut your 5 inches or however long you need to weave in, cut it, and then you'll just like pull that end out and it'll make a little knot there. So you don't need to like knot it again or anything. And then you just weave in the end. So maybe while we're here, we'll just look at how do we weave in the ends. Well, this one's too short. That's because I didn't have enough on my long tail cast on. So sad. But I tried to kind of weave it into my work so that it wouldn't be a big pain. So maybe you're going to weave in some ends here. You're going to like get your tapestry needle. You're going to push it through the big eye. And then when you do weave it in, I would try and weave it in where it's going to hide best. Like you want to weave it into the same color, which is really difficult with these multicolored yarns. Maybe weave it in like 3 or 4 times into different stitches. Let's see, put it here. Maybe I'll have it come out the same place as that one. The nice thing about the end though is that it's going to be sewn together with the other end, so it won't look too obvious if you just kind of weave it in the end here like this. Try to put it underneath the stitches. You just don't want it to fall out and like straggly. No, I'll just cut it. And then the other end has the longer yarn. And so like I was saying, I got to where I had one left, one little loop left. And then I took my needle off and then I just pulled that through and then it's perfect. You don't need to tie a knot right there. But you do want to use it to sew this part to the beginning, so the end to the beginning, right? You're like, okay. And that is just like stitching at the same level, kind of, like if we're at the top of this side, we want to stitch into the top of the other side. Make sure you got your right side on the outside here so you can look and see how it lines up. And if I'm going to go like another kind of row down, and try to go to the second row on this side as well. You go down to the third row sort of on both sides and just kind of pull them together. Oh, my long piece of yarn got stuck. Oops. How did that happen? Okay. There you go. Come on out. There we go. And let's see. Are we basically out of time? Well, I'll just finish real quick. And then you want to try and line it up as much as possible so you don't have like one side longer than the other, you know. Good thing I have a lot of yarn to work with here because I want to be able to sew it together nice and secure and snug. Yeah, I probably would do a much cleaner job if I wasn't feeling like I wanted to finish really quickly, but you guys, you know, it's like that's part of your craft, your craftswomanship or craftsmanship, craftspersonship. You do it with your own heart and soul, you know. You're like, I like it to look absolutely perfect, or I like it to look a little interesting, maybe with a little bit of character. Maybe each time I do it a little bit more neatly each time. That's part of that craftspersonship. Ooh, that one was really weird. It went really deep into the headband. And now we're getting to the end, and that's kind of where you really want to line it up. So it doesn't look like a V. It kind of goes straight across. Can I do it? Because this other side was like curling a little bit in. Maybe I should do one more stitch to see if it looks nice and straight across. That's pretty straight. I like that. I'm also the kind of person who gets to the end and I just want to be done. You know, you might be like that too. And you're like, I want it to look nice, but I also just want to be done. So now I'm weaving it in, making a nice, a nice finished headband here. Woo, I wish I could try it on, but I don't know if it'll fit me. It's a little bit small. But, oh, isn't it gorgeous? And then, you know, our cute little baby headband that maybe you got a little bit of ways in. Super beautiful ribbing. Love it. All right. I don't know if you guys are still here at 5:04, but I just want to say thank you for joining us. I mean, craftacademy.org. We are so excited to start webinars, and I'm really excited to talk with you guys and show you how to do different skills every week. So thank you so much for coming, and we'll see you next time. Bye.